Okay, great. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. I'm Marilyn Lippman with the Texas Jewish Historical Society Meeting Committee, and I'm delighted you're joining us for this joint program of the Texas Jewish Historical Society and the New Mexico Jewish Historical Society. Before we begin, I'd like to share a few logistics for today's webinar. Today's program will run 1 hour. Only presenters will have the ability to speak during the session, unless Sheldon provides the ability otherwise. If you have a question for Jillian at any point, please type it in the Q&A window, also called the chat window, at the bottom of your screen. You may enter questions throughout the presentation and during the final 30 minutes. Linda, Sheldon, and I will select questions from the chat and read them aloud for Jillian to answer. As you know, a link to Jillian's film, Remember My Soul, was available for viewing December 1st through December 6th. We hope you all had an opportunity to watch it in advance of today's discussion. The link is no longer active for this program. Jillian will provide email for you for future reference in order to gain access to her film, and more on that later from Jillian. She'll speak for approximately 30 minutes about the making of the film, followed by 30 minutes of Q&A. And with that, it's my pleasure to turn the program over to Linda Goff, President of the New Mexico Jewish Historical Society. Thanks everyone for being here. Linda, over to you.
Marilyn, thank you. I want to thank both Sheldon and Marilyn Lippman. They are siblings, not married, and I won't say who's the older of the two. That's a secret. So I want to welcome all of our members and those of you from Texas who are members of the New Mexico Jewish Historical Society or who frequently tune into our programs. This is our third collaboration with the Texas Jewish Historical Society. It started out during COVID when we had a joint fall program that focused on the Galveston movement. And then earlier this year, we did a similar program, Film and Q&A, with Jeannie Milgram, Between the Flower and the Stone. And then today with Jillian and Remember My Soul. So we hope we will be able to continue these types of collaborative efforts because they're great to work with. So let me give you a brief introduction for Jillian. Jillian is a PhD student in the history department at Texas A&M, which means she's an Aggie. And she received her bachelor's degree from the University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley, with a double major in Mexican American Studies and Criminal Justice. With tracking her background in filmmaking, she received an Engaged Scholar Award and a Texas Jewish Historical Society Award grant to produce Remember My Soul, which brings to the fore little known history of Jewish history of South Texas. Her current dissertation research focuses on early Black women, filmmakers, and the intersection of film, gender, and race. So Jillian, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Good afternoon, and thank you to Marilyn and Sheldon and Linda. And I actually have a PowerPoint presentation that I'm going to share to help me talk a little bit about the film. So let me pull that up. Give me just one moment. Okay, let me know if that's not showing up properly. And thank you everybody for watching the film and for attending today. I hope you enjoyed the documentary. I just wanted to give a little brief overview and talk a little bit about my experience making the film before we switch over to the Q&A. So how this project started, because a lot of people, that's their first question is like, how did you get interested? How did you make this film? How did you get interested in it? And it all started when I moved to the Rio Grande Valley back in 2016, which feels so long ago now. Um, uh, and then a friend encouraged me to go back to school to get my bachelor's because I had taken a large break right in the middle of my bachelor's degree. So I applied to UT Rio Grande Valley, started going there in spring of 2017, and I was taking an Intro to Mexican American Literature course there. And we had a project where we had to make a digital testimonio, kind of like a personal video project about um, growing up in the Valley, which of course I didn't grow up in the Valley. I grew up in Dallas. And so my professor told me to just make a film related to the Valley and my experience being there, living there. And I decided to connect it to the Jewish history that my friend had told me existed in the area, and then started doing research. And I submitted my project, and my professor loved it, and I really enjoyed making it, and I wanted to do more research and do like a more professional film version of it. And so that's when I decided to make a short film, a short documentary. And I applied for the Texas Jewish Historical Society grant, which I got, and the Engaged Scholar Award, and started the whole process. Um, and had the first draft completed by 2018, and then I finally finished it in July 2019. So the first stage was research, and I love doing research. I'm the kind of person where I could just do research forever and never actually make my project. But so the research phase, I did spend quite a while on, and I started by visiting the synagogues in the area. I did go and speak with the rabbi at the synagogue in McAllen and in Brownsville. I visited the Old Mercedes Temple, which is in the photo here, which is the oldest synagogue in the area. And I went to the McAllen Film Commission, local genealogy groups. I went to libraries, spoke with professors, read books, just did as much research as I could. I even took a research trip to Monterrey, Mexico, which is about 2 or 3 hours south, just to see if I wanted to include more of the Mexico aspect, which of course my film does if you've seen it. But I decided that I really wanted to focus on the valley as much as I could. I did realize that I was going to have to expand the project out because in order to talk about Jewish history in the Valley, you have to go all the way back to 1400s Europe and the Spanish Inquisition and get kind of all of the full backstory of how conversos, crypto-Jews, and Jewish people made their way to Mexico and then South Texas. But it's also kind of difficult because a lot of that history was very secretive. The whole point was that people didn't want anyone to be able to trace them back to their Jewish religion. And so that meant that there wasn't a lot of solid resources to work off of. A lot of it is just sort of clues that you have to piece together. But I wanted to make sure that was clear that a lot of what is in my documentary is just kind of trying to piece together clues, and we're not 100% sure of the history at times. And of course, there's always new research that's going to come out as well. And then the other thing that I realized is that in my documentary, I wanted to bring together these two very different groups in the Rio Grande Valley, which is Catholic Latinos, and then the Jewish population. And to kind of bridge that gap that these two groups might seem very different, but there are actually a lot of commonalities between them, which I talk about in the documentary. But you see a lot of similarities with family values, immigration issues, educational values, a lot of business owners, people that have a lot of community values and a strong sense of faith. And so I wanted to kind of center my film in those commonalities and the valley itself, which is a very unique place where these two different, very different worlds collide. And so in the valley, of course, you have this term somos primos, we are cousins, where that idea that everyone down there is kind of interconnected because of the history and because of these kinship networks. So the interview stage was probably the quickest phase of the film when I finally went into production, but finding people to interview was a challenge. I was lucky that there were some great professors down in the valley that I was able to interview, such as Dr. Rosie Resendez, Dr. Garcia, Lino Garcia, and Dr. Harriet Joseph. And then, of course, there was Dr. Tarlow and Nydia Tapia Gonzalez, and then Eugene with the Brownsville Historical Commission and Larry Holtzman. And so I was aware that I wanted more family connections. I was hoping to find more people that could trace their roots back to crypto Jews. And that was really tough to find at that time, which was, almost 10 years ago. But there were a couple people that I did find locally, but they didn't want to go on camera. They didn't feel comfortable being interviewed. They just wanted to tell me their story face to face to help with my research project. So that was an issue that I encountered. And then after the film came out, every once in a while, I'll find someone or meet someone or come across someone that does have those roots. And I'm just like, oh, I wish, I wish I had known who you were back when I was making the film. But I was still really happy. I felt like I had a good, hopefully kind of wide, diverse range of interview subjects that all contributed to the story in different ways. But after shooting these interviews and going through all the footage, I realized there was so much there and there was no way that I could fit everything I wanted to into a short film. And that's when I realized that it was now going to be a feature-length film, which is a lot more work. A big portion of the film, if you've already watched it, are the suspected customs that we talk about, such as Ladino, the surnames, different foods and ranching customs. And a lot of that seems to be what local people in the area often connect to when they think about their own families. They'll be like, oh, yeah, they'll realize, there were certain customs in their family like that. And also during the production phase, I collected B-roll, which was probably my favorite part of the film because I got to drive all over the valley just to find footage to complement the film and to put in there when I'm not showing photographs or interview footage. And I felt like that was my opportunity to really highlight the Rio Grande Valley and show how beautiful and diverse it is and what it's like there, what the people are like, the culture. Because for me, this film is not a religious film. Like, I don't consider it a religious film. To me, this is a film about the Rio Grande Valley, but I'm just using religion, using, the Jewish history as a vehicle to tell the story of the Rio Grande Valley from one perspective and provide a different, way of looking at that region. And then we have the post-production phase, which was also quite a lengthy phase. The first cut of the film that I edited was about 3 hours long, which is obviously way too long. But it was really fun. I would just spend hours and hours and hours editing the film myself. I was lucky that I was able to have musicians donate music to the film for free. Some of them I found myself, and then also the scene in the film, the Hanukkah festival in the park in McAllen, the band that I feature, they actually sent me several songs to use in the film for free, which was really nice. And then I also had some help from another local documentary filmmaker named Ronnie Garza. He was sort of a mentor to me, especially through the editing phase, and he watched several hours of different cuts of the film and gave me feedback, which I really appreciated. And the film would not have turned out as good as it did without his help. So I always like to mention him. And his documentary is called As I Walk Through the Valley. And it's about the music history of the Rio Grande Valley. So if you're able to find that, I would highly recommend that. And then, of course, once you make your film, you have to share it because that's kind of the whole point, is to get other people to watch it. So it's screened at various film festivals. I've done screenings all over Texas, public screenings, and also private screenings for organizations and for different temples around Texas. And I've had a very diverse audience for the film. I was worried that it would kind of, because it's a very specific topic, it would kind of get pigeonholed to a very niche audience. But actually, a lot of my audiences, like the public screenings, have been people that know nothing about the topic at all. They don't know where the Rio Grande Valley is, and they've really enjoyed it and given me great feedback, and they're really interested and then want to go and do more research about it. Um, it's housed in several Texas universities across Texas and their libraries. Um, and one of my favorite things was getting to hand deliver a DVD copy of the documentary to the Library of Congress to add to their Jewish history collection. And so that top right photo is me at the Library of Congress, standing in front of the motion picture reading room, which is where people would be able to view it if they wanted to. And so finally, lessons learned. This was a 2.5 year process, 2.5 plus. So I learned a lot. It was quite the journey. But some of the things I realized along the way is, talking about crypto Judaism and some of the themes and topics that come along with that can be kind of a contentious subject. Like, some people are very opinionated about it. People of all different kinds of opinions. I had a synagogue um, reject a screening because they felt like it would ruffle too many feathers to bring up this topic of crypto Judaism and who is considered Jewish. And so I found that very interesting, but I feel like most people have actually been very open to it, which is great. Um, and, there's still, even though the valley is actually a pretty open place, I feel like there's still, you're still going to find stereotypes everywhere or negative viewpoints. Um, I'll just very quickly tell a story of when I went with a professor. We were at the Jewish cemetery in Brownsville, which is shown in the film. We were just scoping it out. And and we were walking in the regular part of the cemetery, which, of course, the Jewish cemetery is nice and manicured. It's very well taken care of and it looks beautiful. But the rest of the cemetery in Brownsville sometimes gets a little neglected, especially in the summer when the grass is growing really high. And that was the case then. And this woman walks up and she was kind of lamenting over the state of the regular cemetery, like, oh, why don't they come out and mow the grass and pick up this trash? And the professor jokingly said, you should be buried in the Jewish cemetery. Like, maybe you should convert. And and she just got this horrified look on her face, like, oh my gosh, like, I can't even think about that. And I just thought it was kind of funny because also in my mind, from what I was learning, I was like, she probably actually does have Jewish ancestry and just doesn't even realize it, given the history of the region. But that's why I also realized that humor helps. And so I tried to include a little bit of some of the funny moments in the film and just wanted to make a film that everyone could enjoy, because then you can reach a wider audience. I feel like film is a very effective medium. And so I'm hoping that more people can view the documentary. Even though it's not perfect, I feel like there's been a lot of new research, and I hope there is more attention placed on this topic in the Valley. I'm hoping that maybe this kind of moved the research or the process forward, and then other people can kind of hopefully get interested and take it from there and move it forward in the future. And it helped me connect to my own Jewish background, and that's me on the right with my dad lighting Hanukkah candles when I was little. So, but yeah, that's my presentation, and I'm really happy to answer any questions that y'all have. I'm going to stop sharing the screen here. Hold on, let's see. Okay.
Here's a question. Just out of curiosity, toward the end of the film, there was a kind of obelisk that was something. Huh?
Obelisk.
Obelisk, sorry. That was said something in two languages about peace in the world. It was in English and what seemed to be Portuguese. It did not look like Ladino. I was surprised. Was it Portuguese? And if so, why? Thanks.
I think what they're referring to, um, it should be Spanish, I think, if I'm not mistaken, but I believe what they're referring to was actually located on right at the border wall in Brownsville. So that would have been Spanish in that case. There's a little park right on the border, right where the wall is in Brownsville. And so I was just trying to kind of make that connection again between like the Latino Catholic and the Jewish population that's there.
I'll jump in with another combined comment question. You did a great job discussing conversos and Jews in Brownsville. Why did you decide not to address Jews in other Valley cities and other sources of migration to the Valley?
Because as I mentioned in my PowerPoint, I really wanted, my whole point was to focus on the Valley, um, because it's received the least amount of attention, and so that's why I felt like I needed to just focus on that, because I feel like there have been some great works done on other areas and other topics like Galveston and New York. And so, yeah, I really wanted to create another kind of source material for this topic related to the Valley and just highlight it some more.
You might help to clarify this person's question. By viewing the film, I see that San Antonio and Laredo aren't considered part of the Rio Grande Valley. Is this because of their location? And I think you addressed this in the film, but
Yeah, it's kind of a fuzzy area, but I know after living in the Valley myself, like I don't consider San Antonio the Valley and I don't consider Laredo the Valley, even though they're kind of in, adjacent areas. I think the slide, the second slide, not the title slide, but the slide after that where I have the map of the valley, like that's what there's like 4 counties, and that's what I personally consider the Rio Grande Valley. And I feel like most people that are like from the valley or live there probably do as well, but I don't know, maybe someone else from the valley can attest to that.
Another question is, did you use original documents from the Inquisition for your research?
Um, I believe there are a couple of photos in the documentary that I have that are actual documents from the Inquisition, um, from the Mexican Inquisition, I want to say.
Yeah.
Um, and the title of the film is taken from a document in the Inquisition. That last quote that's on at the very end of the film, where you see where the name of the title comes from that quote. I got that directly from like a transcript of Inquisition documents of this young boy that was reciting a prayer on Yom Kippur that was being questioned by the Inquisition. And remember, my soul was in that prayer. And that's why I decided to use as the title for the film.
Just a comment. We have a Reform Synagogue Temple, Beth Israel in Harlingen. Our rabbi name is Frank Joseph. Just FYI. Another question, how can we see the film?
So I do screenings of the film for organizations, and occasionally I'll do public screenings. I was doing DVDs, but I feel like DVDs have sort of phased out of that's not really how we watch films anymore. So I don't do DVDs anymore. But I am working on getting the film on a better digital platform because sometimes YouTube can be a difficult one on my end. So I'm working on trying to get the film on a site like Vimeo or Canopy where anyone can have much easier access to it. And so Marilyn said that once I have a link for that or more information, that um, she can help spread the word about that. Or you can follow, remember, My Soul has a Facebook page. And so once I have it up on a new platform, I'll definitely be making an announcement on the Facebook page about that and how to access it.
Here's a question. Are there DNA studies in the Rio Grande Valley connecting Jews from Spain, Portugal, and other areas of Europe and beyond?
Yes, that's how Nydia got involved in the project because she had done DNA testing and showed that she had Jewish ancestry that she wasn't aware of. And I feel like that's how a lot of people in the valley that I spoke to that were uncovering their Jewish ancestry were finding out about it, just doing the like ancestry type 23andMe testing and going through and finding it in their results that they got. And then from that point going through and like learning more about that history.
There's a comment question. As an Ashkenazi Jew who lives in northern New Mexico, I learned of a connection between New Mexican women of Hispanic origin and Ashkenazic Jews who share the BRCA gene that causes breast cancer. Can you talk about the intersections between Ashkenazi and Sephardic Jews and the research into the genetic passing down of the BRCA gene in the valley?
Well, I am not an expert on that. I would not be the right person to talk to about that. But that's really interesting. I was not aware of that. I don't know if genealogy groups would be have
Yes.
information about that. Okay.
Yeah, if I may, I'll just jump in for just a moment, because here in New Mexico, this is a big issue among the Hispanic women community, and it has been easily for the last 15 to 20 years. And we have found that in northern New Mexico, and particularly some isolated valley areas that go up into southern Colorado, the San Luis Valley, where there are groups of women of Sephardic background who don't know they're Jewish, right? They're crypto Jews for the most part, and finding out, unfortunately, they carry the BRCA gene and have been affected with breast cancer in their families. And there's been a real push here in New Mexico on the part of public health to, public education to let women of Hispanic descent here in New Mexico get tested, because because that hidden gene may be there.
Okay, another question. I'm curious why you begin to film with several people who knew nothing about Judaism. One knew a little when the film focused on the mixed Jewish ancestry of many RGV residents. I must say, though, that I loved the beginning anyway. And it's followed up by another person who say, I see you use pictures from TJHS collection at the Briscoe Center. How did you select pictures? Actually, two different questions.
I'll start with the first question. I did sort of those street style interviews where I just asked random people because I kind of wanted to find out or kind of set the tone of what the average person in the valley knew about the Jewish religion. Um, and yeah, I don't know. I think I was more just interested for myself and to kind of, yeah, just like set the tone to then go on and talk about um, what the actual history was and more about it. And it was also sort of interesting to me because there were a lot of patterns in what the people were saying, like they knew what Hanukkah was, but there were a lot of misconceptions too. And and then it also, I felt like at times was uh, just kind of like provided some humor to the film. Um, and yeah, I really enjoyed doing that. Although I don't know, I feel like some of the people that were put on the spot did not love being put on the spot. But yeah, I just wanted to set the tone for what people knew about Judaism in the Valley. Non-Jewish people, I should say, what they knew about Judaism in the Valley. Um, and then let's see, the second question.
Collecting your
I think,
photos.
yeah, I don't know if I know exactly because it's been so long. It was so many years ago, but I think it was just because I think some of those pictures were in the segment of the film where Dr. Tarlow's kind of talking about like the question of who do we consider a Jew? And I think I used some of those photos for that section. And so I might have had that in mind when I went into the Briscoe Center looking for photos that I felt like would make sense to put there or create like the right visual I wanted for that section. Um, but I was and also the film is also at the Briscoe Center. So if you're in Austin, I think that you can go watch it there. I don't know for sure, but I know that they do have a DVD copy of the film. So that could be another way to see the film for anyone local to that area.
Here's a question. Can you discuss any topics that you were not able to include in the film or areas that you would research further if you had an opportunity? I'm especially interested in the Mexican side of the crypto-Judaic story.
Hmm. I know that there is a lot of information available about the Mexican side, like books, um, and documents and articles. So again, that's why I decided not, to focus on that, to focus more on the Valley side. But that would also be an interesting film, I think, too. Um, but there was one thing that I didn't realize that there's like a lot of I don't know what the right word is, but a lot of opinions on as well. When I was interviewing Dr. Tarlow, he brought up the debate on whether Christopher Columbus was Jewish, and I thought that was kind of interesting. I don't know if there's been like a lot of articles or things done on that, but that's something I'd like to look into now that I realize it's like a very big debate. Or maybe not. I don't know. I guess maybe people in the audience here could probably enlighten me. But I thought that was really interesting. And I did read a book actually that said that the first voyage had Jewish doctors, I believe, on board. So from a historical standpoint, I just find it really interesting. And also I think if I had been able to find some more individuals or even like whole families that wanted to come on and talk more about um, roots that they could trace back to crypto Judaism. I think that would have added to the film just more generally. But yeah, maybe future research projects or something.
Here's a oh,
Go ahead, Linda.
okay, thank you. A comment question. For crypto Jews who practice Catholicism their entire life, did they increase their Jewish practice / synagogue attendance once they realized that they were Jewish?
I think it just depends because, like Nydia has Jewish ancestry, but from what I recall, you know, she's I don't recall that if she really practices it, because I know that the like other people in her family at the time weren't that open about it. Um, and there's other people that I've come across that know that they have Jewish ancestry or discovered it, but they still consider themselves, Catholic or Christian or whatever their current religion is, and they don't really pursue it. But then I've also met other people that did pursue it and they decided to, become a member at a temple and learn more about it. So I guess it just kind of depends on each individual person and what they think about that information and how much they choose to pursue it.
I can say that in the case of New Mexico, as you just described, Jillian, it really is a mixed bag. I mean, there are people who have said, you know, I discovered the Jewish roots, but for many generations, our family was Catholic. I'm a Catholic, and a Catholic I will remain. And on the flip side to that, with the discovery, they start their own, quote, personal journey to learn more about Judaism, their family's history, genealogy, and some, in fact, go through the formal conversion practice and become very active in their community synagogue. So it's a mixed bag here in New Mexico.
Somebody asked you on the street interviews, were there any local people who actually were well versed in Judaism, or did you just not include them, and if there were, where were they located, in what places?
No, so I did not exclude anything from those interviews. What you see is like pretty much the consensus that I got when I was actually doing the interviews, and I did those in, some of it could have had to do with where I went to interview people. One of the places was downtown Brownsville. And then I also went to actually a big like local flea market in, I think it was San Juan, Texas, which is kind of like next to Edinburgh and McAllen. And um, and then also on campus as well, on the UTRGV campus. But no, what you saw was pretty much like what the consensus was. Yeah.
Um, thank you for,
Yeah,
I'm
I
sorry.
was that one. Go ahead.
Okay. A fellow New Mexican here with a comment. Thank you for this film. My wife was born in McAllen, and we were married in McAllen Synagogue by Rabbi Tarlow. She comes from a converso background. If I want to do more research, where could I start?
Well, I guess it depends what kind of research you're talking about. Um, if if you mean from a genealogical standpoint, like her own converso background, um, I would check out the local genealogy group. I know they're really good. I don't know the name of them off the top of my head, but they would definitely be able to help. But if you're talking about like converso more generally, the only local sources, like sources I found that were about crypto Judaism or converso history in like the Valley or South Texas, was a dissertation from the 1970s that someone had written on that topic. And Dr. Lino Garcia, too, is actually, he wrote articles that were a little more like newspaper articles that were a little more local to South Texas and the Valley area about Jewish history. But there's just not a lot of research or a lot of sources about this history in the Valley. So I haven't checked recently to see if that's changed, but I hope that it does because it's understudied area. So it's a little tough to find like converso history specific to this region, I would say. But if you're talking about you want to know more about the genealogy, there are local groups there that I know could definitely help out and provide the right resources.
Okay. Let's see, somebody did make a recommendation about, we were talking about the Mexican side of crypto Jewish. Norma recommends Living in Silverado by David Gitlitz for information about crypto Jewish life in Mexico. So if you want to make a note of that, Living in Silverado by David Gitt, Gitls, Litz.
Mm.
That might answer some questions on the Mexican side. Are you familiar with that book, Jillian?
Not with that book, but
Or
with
that
that.
film? I guess it's a film. I guess. I don't know. Film or I'm not
I
sure.
think Gitlit, I don't know. I think Gitlitz is a author, if I'm not
Yes.
Okay.
mistaken. Okay.
Yeah, he's a researcher and he has been over at the University of Arizona or
Mm.
Arizona State, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. There's also Rabbi Stephen Leon in El Paso, who has worked extensively with the Converso Crypto Jewish community in Laredo. That's another excellent resource for
Yeah.
those who might be interested.
Mhm.
Another one, my great uncle used to visit relatives in Leon. The only name I remember is Dr. Enrique Biel. I can't pronounce that. Bielstocki.
The
I tried.
Alastaki.
I tried to find his family without success. How can we best find relatives in the area? And what's the status of Jewish life in Leon?
Mm, that's interesting. Um, I would say again, trying like genealogy groups in that area. I don't know because I focus so much on the valley. I don't know as much about Leon, but Dr. Tarlow might, because he talked about Leon in the film. And so if you Google his organization that's mentioned in the film, you might be able to get his contact info, and he could provide some resources. And he has like 3 PhDs, and I think they're all related to Jewish history and Jewish studies somehow. But yeah, he's a encyclopedia of resources.
I was in Portugal and Spain this summer, and our tour guide explained that the Jews that stayed and converted were made to eat pork, but also were made to clean their houses on Saturday to prove they had converted. I had never heard about the cleaning. Was that true?
I don't know. That's the first time I've heard that too, but I mean, I wouldn't be surprised, if they were making people eat pork um, to prove that they had converted. I could definitely see them forcing people to clean their house, on a Saturday. So yeah, I don't know. That's the first time I'm hearing that too. That's really interesting.
I think there is some documentation about the consuming pork when the Jews in Spain, had to either decide to convert or not, and it was a test that was sometimes used by the Inquisition.
Do you plan to remain in the Rio Grande Valley? Have you yourself become part of the Jewish community there?
So, no, I moved away from the valley once I graduated and got my degree. And so now I'm in College Station working on my PhD. I do go back and visit, though. I actually really love going back and visiting. I went back to visit a couple summers ago to do my master's research, and I've kept in contact with several people down there. So I love going back and visiting the valley. Um, the Jewish community, I'm not like I keep in contact with a few people down there. Um, but yeah, I'm hoping that I can go back down there and maybe do more screenings or do some more research one day. But right now I'm just really working on my PhD and trying to get that done first before I start any new projects.
Did you run into any anti-Semitism among the local people when you were making the film?
Hmm. Um, I would say no. Um, no, not what I would consider anti-Semitism. I think kind of what Nydia says in the film, where sometimes um, come in contact with people that just are misinformed or miseducated or don't know about Judaism, and so they just go off of stereotypes or assumptions. But for the most part, I got a really positive response from people when I was making the film, even if they didn't really know anything about the topic or they weren't Jewish. They were really curious and interested, which I thought was really great. And I think that people down there, even if they're not Jewish, they're just really interested in learning more about the history of where they live and where they're from, and having more attention brought to the area. So they were really excited that I was actually making a film about the valley. But yeah, no, anti-Semitism was not something that I encountered down there.
Here's a question. Do you know whether rabbis consider it necessary to convert from crypto Jew to be a Jew if crypto Jews request it?
Um, that I don't know. Let's see. Can you read the question one more time?
Yeah, it's do you know whether rabbis consider it necessary to convert a crypto Jew to a Jew
Hmm.
if the crypto Jew requests it?
Mm.
Okay, I misstated a little bit
That's
initially,
okay.
so sorry about that.
I feel like from what I understand, it kind of depends on each congregation or each rabbi. Because like I mentioned earlier, I think different congregations have different sort of opinions or views on it. And so it kind of depends. It's like a case by case basis. But I feel like I have met people that ran into issues where they wanted to convert and they were having trouble finding a rabbi that would help them convert. So I don't know if that's an issue or if that's something that, Linda or someone else, if you have any comments on that.
Um, I think I can lend a comment or two based on personal experience of knowing folks. Um, as everyone around the screen, knows the difference, basic difference between Orthodox, conservative, and Reform congregations and communities. It's not so easy to convert within the Orthodox uh, stream of Judaism. Um, People that I know here have met with rabbis, and they do basically a year's course of study if the rabbi is open to it, and then undergo what they call the Beit Din, and do the ritual bath, the mikveh, and so forth. But Reform Judaism is much more open in terms of the lineage, patrilineage versus matrilineage. So, as you said, it really depends upon the community and the rabbi, and whether or not they're willing to do it. But if so, it's a rather, you know, complete course of study to formally convert.
There's a couple questions. Do you envision doing more research on the history of Anglo Jews in the Valley? And you might couple that with what is your next project?
Mhm. Well, I've had a lot of people ask me or encourage me to continue my research on this topic, which is definitely something I would consider. I would have to wait again till I'm post PhD to start any new projects, but it would be nice to go back down and see if I could find more people that have those direct connections that I can interview and maybe even um, write an article that could be published with my new research in it. I don't know if I would make another film unless I have another 2.5 years to dedicate to it. But it's definitely something that, I would be open to if the timing was right. Because again, I think there's a lot more research that needs to be done down there. And now that I'm, and I made the film as an undergrad, whereas now that I'm going through formal, historian training at A&M, I have more knowledge at my fingertips to maybe go and find those resources that have yet to be uncovered. But my project, that I'm working on right now deals with early Black women filmmakers in the United States from about 1910 or 1918 to 1941, which again, lack of sources there as well. So I think I tend to like the projects where they're very understudied and you really have to go in and dig up, your research on the topic. But hoping that maybe I could make a film to complement that research as well. So we'll see.
Here's
See.
a suggestion for researching conversos is extremely difficult because many records were destroyed during the Inquisition. I recommend interviewing older family members and picking up family names and starting research there. Many of those records might be in Mexico and especially Monterrey, since many of them came over during the influx of the Spaniards and Portuguese into Mexico. So you might, if you have a contact in Monterrey. I might also suggest if you're beginning research, particularly in Texas, but anywhere, that if you go to the Texas Jewish Historical Society website, we have a section on research resources, not just for Texas, but for national. And so there are quite a few places that it would be a beginning. We have links to many of the sites, including the Briscoe Center at the University of Texas and Rice University archives, but also the portal to Texas history, which you can search lots of documents, newspapers, official documents, birth certificates. So that's one place to get started, and we invite you to look at study that section of the TJHS website.
Similarly, with the New Mexico Jewish Historical website, we have some good references for people to start. Let me just share one comment. Excellent documentary and interesting presentation. Thanks for stimulating interest in these important topics, and best of luck in your doctoral studies.
Oh, thank you. And I was going to mention even, because Sheldon, you mentioned some other resources on the website. I know even in my own research, when I was having to try to look up genealogical information about families for my research, even just going on like ancestry.com or family search, I've been able to find a lot for other people's families and even my own families. So those are good resources as well if you have like a little bit of information that you can plug in and get started with.
One other question. Are there specific efforts at this time to educate the Valley population about Judaism, separate from this great film?
That's a good question. I know, they have the RGV Chabad down there. I don't know. I feel like from what I know about them and what I've seen like on their social media, that is part of what they do. I don't know to what extent, but I know they're very active down there. And I can also shout out my former colleague at Texas A&M, Gabby Lyle. She does research. Her dissertation was about Jewish history all along the Texas, or actually all along the southwest border, I believe. But she does focus heavily on Texas. And so her project has been really interesting. And I think she's looking at a later time period, whereas I go all the way back to like the beginning of Converso and crypto-Jewish immigration to Mexico and the region. I think she's looking more like maybe 19th, 20th century. but she's done a lot of great work, and I'm sure y'all know of other people that y'all have awarded things to that you could also mention as well.
Well, and part of our objective is community outreach. So when we do have meetings in other communities, we typically let people know and invite the community to participate. So part of the onus is on our organizations to get the word out and invite people.
Mhm. Yeah, that's why I'm hoping I could do some more screenings down there. The official premiere of the film when it came out in 2019 was at the Museum of South Texas History. And so we had a packed audience. It was full, and I know that it was a very diverse audience. So I know there is a lot of interest down there. It's just a matter of um, uh, bringing the resources or bringing the information and the presentations there.
Mhm.
Have you shown it to, there is an Austin Jewish Film Festival. Has it aired there to your
It
knowledge?
has not, no. I don't recall if I applied for that.
Okay.
Recently showed at a Jewish film festival in Florida, but not the Austin one.
Yeah. But then again, it doesn't have to be a Jewish film festival. I mean, there are all sorts of,
Yeah,
there's
yeah. Well, I
Hispanic
mean,
film festivals, that would be a
yeah.
great opportunity.
Yes, it has shown at the San Antonio Film Festival and a couple of online film festivals. We screened it in Bryan, Texas, did a public screening there. So I really like doing the screenings that are for, not like a non-Jewish audience because it's really interesting to see their reactions and they do seem really, interested in the topic, which is
Mhm.
great. Yeah.
One final question. Did you find some surprises during your research of the crypto Jews? Surprises?
I'm trying to think if there's anything that jumps out at me. Mm, I mean, I think it was kind of all surprises, honestly, because it was the first time I was learning about all these things. But I think maybe the Christopher Columbus thing, like that was the first time that I had personally heard that. And I was like, oh, okay. But yeah, I think it was just so much new information and it was so interesting to me that, and I think it was also really just interesting and kind of surprising to see how other people, non-Jewish people in the region, with I think it was surprising just how positive the response was down there from the non-Jewish community. That was actually really surprising because I was expecting a little bit of pushback from them. But the only pushback I've ever received or like criticism I've ever received is from um, uh, the Jewish synagogue that I mentioned in San Antonio and a couple of people that viewed the film that had Jewish roots that felt like, I didn't get the story right, or they had their own personal take on it, which that's still opening up conversation. So I'm fine with getting feedback like that. Mhm.
Mhm. Well, I think we've covered the questions and we're at the hour. So thank you, Jillian, for a great presentation and for sharing your insights into the making of Remember My Soul. We're truly grateful for your time, your talent, and your willingness to engage in our questions today. And thank you as well to all of our attendees from both the Texas Jewish Historical Society and the New Mexico Jewish Historical Society. We appreciate your participation and the thoughtful questions you submitted. If you enjoyed today's program, we encourage you to stay connected with both organizations for future events, webinars, and opportunities to learn more about the Jewish history of our region. So On behalf of the Texas Jewish Historical Society and the New Mexico Jewish Historical Society, thank you again for joining us, and we wish you all a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you.